Right, I think we are live. So, hello everyone. Great to do our third live stream ever on the EU Made Simple. So, great to have you all here. I think we'll have the viewers grow a bit more, hopefully, from now on. And we have an amazing topics to talk about today, and we have lots of exciting guests. And I mean, I hope you've watched my videos. It's basically all around the UK elections, and of course tonight the French elections. And these are the two big topics that we're going to talk in detail about tonight. And we have two colleagues joining us later in a couple of minutes, actually. Firstly, from the UK, and talking a bit about what this all means in the UK for our European Union and what these results actually mean for the UK too. You know, it's still Europe, so very relevant for our channel. And secondly, we're at 8 o'clock when the results start coming out for France. We will have some French colleagues that will join us, or friends, I'd say, friends of the channel, that will talk a little bit about what it all means for France. And of course, for the European Union, because it looks like Le Pen's national rally might clean everything up. But before we get started, I thought before we look at our guests, we do a little quick recap of the Euro Cup, because I am from the Netherlands and I'm still a bit, I don't know, tense from the game yesterday, where we played Turkey. And now there's 4 teams in the Euro Cup semifinals. So we have a bit over 100 people on here right now. And the first question I would like to ask you is a fun poll of who you think will make the finals, or at least who will win the whole thing. So let us know. And France, England, come on, not England, because England is the team that we're playing next on Wednesday. And even though I love the UK, I think on that evening I'll be a bit more taken aback, and hope that Netherlands will take the whole thing. At the moment we have, it's quite even. Spain, Netherlands is quite high, but quite a few of Dutch people in the actual chat. All right. Yeah, Spain. To be fair, it's a fair answer. Yeah. Okay. So my predictions are Holland's going to beat England. It's going to be penalties, I think, and I think that England's going to do it a second time. That would be my 2 cents. And the next final game, or on the other side of the semi-final, we will have, of course, Spain versus France. And I assume that France, even though they've been playing terribly, will probably take it. I hope not. I quite like Spain. So then we could have a final, I hope, of Spain against the Netherlands, and France against the Netherlands, and then we will probably lose. That's going to be my EUMS prediction. But anyway, lovely poll. That was just a bit of fun to start off with. We're here for more interesting topics. And the first one is the UK elections. And you can see my screen. I am sharing with you the results. Now, very quickly, before I introduce my first guest, I would like you all to, like to explain to you how this works. So I launched a video on this on Friday, actually, right after the elections. And the Labour Party took it by a landslide, the elections. What does that mean? It means that in the UK, there's 650 constituencies. So that basically means that the UK is split up in 650 parts. And each of these parts, I think on average, there's about 70 to 75,000 people in these parts. Might be a bit more, might be a bit less. Are then represented by basically one person, one MEP, or one MP, not MEP, that's for the European Union. And basically what that means is that one constituency, one MP, member of parliament, meaning that there's 650 total members of parliament within the UK, parliament. And as you can see on the screen, Labour took a massive win. So 411 out of 650. I myself come from the Netherlands, and this is extremely rare in our country, because it never happens, because we have proportional representation, which is something we'll get into in a little bit more detail later. And we never have majorities like this, of one party taking the majority. And what does it mean? A majority in the UK means that party can then also set the prime minister. So this is Keir Starmer for Labour, and he will be the prime minister for, the next 4 years, I think it is, or 4. I think it's a 4-year term. It might be 5. But our first guest can probably let us know about that. So without further ado, I'm not a big fan of monologues, so I love getting a guest on the live stream to really talk about all of this, to really get into the detail, especially because I'm not from the UK. And I'd like to first introduce a fellow YouTuber called Evan Edinger. And he's an American-British-based YouTuber, or American-British YouTuber living in London. And he has a massive following. He has almost 800,000 subscribers. So that's still quite some way for us to go. But very, very interesting content. He releases videos every week, and he talks about the funny differences between British and US culture. And he's also into politics and much more. But yeah, so check him out. Details in the description. And Evan, great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining our live stream today. And yeah, maybe a couple of words. Did I introduce you correctly, or is there a mistake I made?
Oh, no, everything's fine. I actually didn't know I was on yet. This is something I notoriously do. I think I'm off. I think I'm just waiting, looking around, checking where's the microphone button. And then I know there I am just dodging and looking around. The camera is right in front of the monitor, so to read things, I'm like, Labor 1. Yeah. So it was a good intro. That is my name. You pronounced my name correctly. Totally fine. I can't say anything in Dutch, but I like the word for emergency exit because it looks like no do it, gang. You know, don't go out this exit. So that's about it. I don't fucking sorry. I really like stroopwafel.
I love it. I love it. So I love the informality too. It's good. It's good to have you here. It's really good to have you here. I mean, big fan of your work, and thank you again for joining. First, the most important question out of them all: who is going to win the Euro Cup? Just before we get into politics.
I do not follow footy at all.
I do.
I just haven't.
It's the American in you, right?
Yeah, I just don't. I don't follow any sport for the most part. But I usually watch like the final game because I find that really exciting. I feel like England is just always destined to lose. Like, you know, it's coming home, but it's not to our home. Right. However, everyone was so excited for that game yesterday, like to be able to play against the Netherlands. My Dutch friend texted me saying, "Best of luck." Against the Netherlands this upcoming week. So I was like, ooh. Yeah, I actually couldn't tell you the difference between the World Cup and the Euros, except I guess they just, well, never mind. It's probably just the European World Cup. Exciting, though. I'll watch the final.
Good. I mean, UK is doing England is doing very, very well, right? I mean, be interesting to see. But anyway, so the UK elections, Thursday evening, massive night in the UK, and we have the results on the screen. Basically, before we even go into specific questions, what do you think of it? Was it expected? Was it unexpected? What is your first taste of the results?
It was a really hard one to kind of predict in a way, because all of the polls, all the media was basically predicting this Labour massive turnover here for ages. However, I think the British public were used to that not happening because they also predicted quite a huge Labour win last election, I believe in 2019. And then it was the exact opposite. Conservatives totally swept a majority. So that's why almost every friend that I know 100% voted for Labour as a tactical vote to ensure that the Tories would be kicked out. Because, of course, we do use first past the post, so you can actually vote for who you want.
Evan, sorry to interrupt you, but first past the post. I think a lot of people probably don't know what it means. Maybe you can just explain a little bit what first past the post is.
Yes. So under proportional voting, you vote for who you want. And it's pretty representative of who's actually going to be put into office. Your voice is heard. And then all those individual groups get to work together. With first past the post, it's first past like the majority. As soon as one person has one more vote, they get all of the members of parliament for that constituency. They get basically everything. So that is why you might see some parties in the UK election here, they got about, I think it's 14.7% of the vote are actually only represented by less than 1% of the seats in parliament.
This is crazy, right? I mean, if I look at percent of vote, Labour won 34%, so a third. But if I look at seats, they won 411 seats, which is what, like 60% of all the seats?
They pretty much won over 60%, but yet with 34% of the vote. Yeah.
Crazy. So, I mean, let me ask you this. Is that fair?
Well, I think it makes the election way more strategic because it's almost like companies in a way, rather than every party campaigning in every area to make sure that their manifesto, their way of life would maybe be seen by more people. They actually just have to strategically only invest money and invest policies for certain areas. So where I live, I actually had pretty much no liberal Democrat exposure. However, in certain areas of London in the southwest, overwhelming advertising for them, and it works because they put all their budget into certain constituencies, and then boom, that boosts, everything's fine. So yeah, I do find that the one positive of first past the post, at least this is what a lot of people in the UK, why we haven't yet changed yet. One of the biggest positives is that it does create a two-party system. And so rather than have a parliament which has loads of different individual small groups that are hard to get along with, in terms of you have to, shake hands and form a majority with multiple parties and get along, with the UK's first past the post, you get this type of conservative or Labour, just one party taking majority, meaning you could just pass laws. However, the one downside of that being you don't really change much, because you're never going to have those fringe voices heard. You're just going to have very much central left or central right. And even if you do try and have other parties, they're always going to move towards the center. And so the positive of it, you actually get things passed. The negative, you're not actually going to get much progress. It's mostly status quo.
Yeah, and this is interesting, right? Maybe also for the viewers. Look at this example. So we have here like a constituency called Barrow and Furness. And you can see here in 2024, 44% went to Labour, 31% to the Conservatives, 17% to Reform, and 4% to Liberals, etc. So basically, this means that really only the 44% are technically represented, right? Because the others voted for someone completely different. So
so their vote's wasted, essentially.
Essentially wasted, right? Okay, right. So also maybe for the viewers, I'm from the Netherlands, and in our system, it's a bit different, right? In our system, how it would work is that you look at the percentages of all the votes counted together in the country. And then, for example, if one party wins 30% of all the votes in the country, they would get the equivalent percentage of seats, more or less. So that's how a proportional system would work. And this is, of course, then first past the post, if I explained that correctly.
It's pretty much bang on. I think that one of the major problems with first past the post is it causes voter apathy. And you have a lot of people saying, what's the point of voting? Because if your person doesn't win, well, your vote didn't matter. And so even if your person isn't going to win, you also don't really get to choose who you want, because you kind of have to choose the middle guy. If you didn't vote Labour this election, well, then the Tories could have won, and then you get what you wanted at all. So it's quite difficult.
I mean, oh, I went to the wrong screen. There we go. Just quickly to the chat too, while I'm messing around here with the live results from the UK. If you have any questions, make sure that you maybe at EU Made Simple, so then we can see them more clearly while we're talking.
Yeah, also your average, the comment from your average giraffe very much is spot on. A lot of people historically agree that first past the post is better for strong governments, but as a quick counter to that, the Conservatives over the last 14 years, they did have a big campaign saying, if you vote for us, we'll have a big majority and we'll have a, quote, strong and stable government. And instead, we got multiple different prime ministers going in and out, one that tanked the entire economy in the UK and was outlasted by a head of lettuce. So not necessarily strong or stable. In practice.
Okay, so before we go to we are an EU channel, so there's probably lots of people from the EU, and what does it mean for the EU? We'll get there, but there's something else I would like to point out here, which I found interesting, and that's Reform. So if I look at the percentage of votes, Reform came fourth. So that's, quite a lot. And if I look at seats, they only won 5. So again, there's the proportional representation first past the post issue. Maybe before we even look at that, who are Reform anyway? And I think if I understood it correctly, it's your right-wing populist group, right? Or do I see that wrong?
Yeah, Reform is the populist, extreme right-wing or radical right-wing party.
It's Nigel Farage, right? He's back.
Yeah. I think he tried to be a member of parliament 7 times, and this was his 8th time, but he finally nailed it. He was with the UKIP party, the Brexit party. He was trying anything, and this one finally worked. He riled up enough people. And one interesting thing to note here, if you look at the total number of votes for every party this election, is that if this is a hypothetical, but if you actually add all the votes from Reform and all the votes from the Conservatives, that's actually way more than the Labour majority. So if Reform didn't exist and all of the Reform voters wanted to vote Tory or Conservative, well, we would have had 5 more years of winter. So
I actually think this is actually quite a cool thing to bring up here.
It
shows basically for the viewers, what does this show? It shows that if we add up the Conservative votes, so the party that came second, and we add the Reform UK votes to them, the exactly percentage-wise, I think it is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We'd actually have a majority of conservatives throughout the country, right? Yeah.
Even though, as you can see, there's like no reform on the map. They're too small to notice. Like that is interesting.
Yeah. Crazy.
Also, big notes on that specific map. One, Wales is very proud. A lot of my Welsh friends are incredibly excited because there is not a Tory seat, as far as I know, in Wales. So it's never. I don't know how long it's been since there's been no Conservatives in Wales, but that's a thing. And if you look at a map of London, the 32 boroughs, pretty much there is all Labour in the entire, well, and the Lib Dems in the southwest, but it's pretty much just a map that's all red. The only difference being there is, interestingly, a grey in the middle, which is for Islington, because Jeremy Corbyn, who was our Labour leader for 2 times and failed, who got more votes when he lost last election, he campaigned because he was kicked out of the Labour Party and he won. So that's
insane. I thought he was super unpopular, but apparently not in his own constituency.
he's done a lot of good work for his borough, for his constituency, for about 40 years. And so he never campaigned this time saying, hey, this is what I did with Labour. It was like, here's what I've actually done for you. And people were like, yeah, you're great. So
interesting. And we have a cool question from the chat that I'm going to ask you. And it's from Cafe is Love. So thank you for your question. And it is, what's the general mood after the election in the UK? Hopefully apathy, or UK is destroyed? quite a dramatic question, but hey, yeah.
I mean, you have to understand that I live in London. And so London, if you look at the map of the votes, is incredibly liberal, is incredibly happy, excited that it's no longer the reign of terror that the Tories have had for 14 years. A lot of the Tory policies, the conservative policies, do negatively impact cities as opposed to people living in outer areas. So from my areas, the next day, everyone's just talking about it so excitedly, like, oh my God, did you see this constituency? Oh my God, did you see the map of Wales? Like, everyone where I live is incredibly excited about the election. And we're also now like, all right, you've done it, Labour. Now get on with it. Like, actually do something, please, because a lot of people don't really think Labour is going to do much because they've gone so far to the center after ousting Jeremy Corbyn. So.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting. Because I always, maybe another question for you is, do you think Labour won that much because they just loved Keir Starmer and loved the party, the people in the country, or was it more of a, I just don't like the Conservatives, so I'm voting Labour? Or is it both?
I don't think there's any both. There's a really famous quote that is, people never vote in governments, they vote out governments.
Right.
And I think that really much applies. I have never once met one person that went, oh man, I love me some Keir Starmer, his politics are fire. Everyone pretty much just goes, I really, really don't want any more austerity. I want to stop the homelessness problem and the food banks piling up. I think there's more food banks than a lot of fast food chains somehow. It's depressing. And so a lot of people are just like, let's end the previous thing. And a lot of my friends have thought maybe Keir has been doing this 4D chess where he's just being extra boring to get some people involved, as opposed to Corbyn, who actually had policies that people liked. Now that he's in power, he can be like, here we go.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Is it, I mean, with a majority like that, is Labour, are they like very united? Do you know what I mean? Like,
incredibly.
Okay.
There is a left like Labour does still have like the left of the party, and they do have the centrists. But the fact that Labour now have such a huge majority, even if there's multiple MPs within the party that are like, oh, I don't agree with this policy, doesn't matter. Like, they can pass what they want. And this is quite rare. We also have a Labour mayor of London. So now it's similar to the US, where you have, the same with the Congress and Senate. Or I wish I knew more about the EU so I can make a nice relevant thing. But now you might be able to see some things pass in London specifically that the Tories have been holding us back from, such as certain boroughs having too much power to say no to things like you would love in the Netherlands, cycleways. So hopefully we can get some more cycleways.
Awesome. Evan, we have another question from the chat. It's from Politics for Fun. Thank you very much for the super chat. What does this election mean for the EU? Do you have anything that jumps to mind, first of all, around that question?
Well, so it's quite upsetting because Labour originally did have a plan of rejoining the EU, or at least the single market. However, I think Keir Starmer and the current Labour government were just so desperate to be as non-offensive and boring as possible. So they were like, we're not rejoining the EU, we're not rejoining the market, we're going to stop looking in the past, but look in the future. Whereas the Lib Dems, the Greens, they actually wanted to implement change. So I feel like for the next 5 years, it doesn't seem too likely like there's going to be much movement in the EU. That being said, I think there were around 70, give or take, members of parliament that were elected for the Lib Dems who did want to rejoin a lot of those. And that is quite a lot. It's not the 120-ish of the Conservatives, but them plus Greens and a lot of the left-leaning Labour, we might see something, but I wouldn't really bet on it personally.
Yeah, because I mean, I had a look at this also after the elections, and just like you said, right, the Greens, even the SNP, okay, they want to leave the UK and then join the EU. So I guess they're kind of pro EU and want to rejoin. Yeah. And the Lib Dems definitely in their manifesto long term they would like to too. So 81,
SNP did sadly they got decimated. They got decimated, year, but that I believe was because a lot of controversies. I think there was the leader there. Their spouse, I believe, was embezzling funds or something. So pretty much wiped their entire party out, which is such a shame because I do like that Scottish politicians are more for Scotland, which I think makes sense. And in Wales, they have Plaid Cymru, and they're also pro-Wales. So there's something nice about that because there is an issue where so many politicians are very England-focused, as we have about 84% of the entire population of the UK is in England. And especially so many people like me are in London and we're like in a bubble. We're like, I don't care about that. I don't care about Scotland. It's too far away. London, give me a psycho way. It's hard to balance all that.
It is hard to balance. I mean, let me scroll down actually again. So you mentioned the SNP. They lost 38 seats. So while I scroll down quickly for the crowd, the SNP is a Scottish National Party. They're mainly, as Evan told us, in the north here in yellow. So those are the constituencies they won in Scotland, which makes sense. But as you can see here, a lot of them, Labour kind of, went north. Like, I think these were used to be SNP constituencies. Is that correct, or where do you think they lost most of their constituents?
Oh yeah, it was very much like the Scottish weren't really going to vote too heavily towards Conservatives, especially in the areas that were more Scottish National Party strongholds. So they pretty much defaulted, as many people did, to go, well, not the Tories, not the Conservative Party. So they went with Labour. Now, I think that there's a chance that the SNP can have a nice big bounce back at the next election if they really clean up their act, because the Liberal Democrats had a huge issue 14 years ago. They joined power with the Conservative Party and pretty much betrayed some of their manifesto and a lot of the people that voted for them. And they lost hugely in the next election, but they've actually completely bounced back. So I do think that the SNP, the Scottish National Party, does bounce back as well.
Oh, fair enough. Maybe just a quick word. The Greens, they grew by 3 seats. So it's definitely step forward for them, right? Because it's interesting for us as EU citizens because the Greens lost massively during the last European elections. They lost I think, like 20 to 30 seats in the European Parliament. Wow. And here it's kind of the reverse. So that was quite interesting. I mean, what made them win? Is it, again, dislike for the Conservatives and people are looking for something else? Or what would your opinion be on that?
So I feel like the way that it works in the UK is the fringe the parties on the edge, such as Green, Lib Dems for the most part, and also Reform, people actually want to vote for those for reasons that they actually have manifestos that talk about policies that people want. Reform is very anti-immigration, and a lot of people are for that. Then they can vote Reform.
Right.
Green have a huge amount of progressive policies that would more align it with many countries in Europe. I do think they have some backwards policies, but they do have the heart in the right place. And so I'd say like the majority of my friends in London are actually very big on Green and they wanted to vote Green. It's just that in their constituency, because of first past the post, they couldn't risk the vote. But it's incredibly exciting that for as long as they've been, I think they've been a thing for 50 years in the UK, they've now got 4 seats in a lot of areas. I think in my borough, my constituency, I was so surprised. Green was second place. And what that means for me is that I now have a chance to vote for Green rather than it being the 2 major parties being Conservatives and Labour. So I have to vote one of those 2. Now, the people that actually want to vote Green can vote more. So it might just be that next year we have even more Green. So we'll see.
No, very interesting development. Brendan, Evan. Brendan is our next guest, by the way. I'm giving it away. Evan. you also have an American US background, right?
Yeah.
So I can't help myself to ask you about the situation in the US, because I think all of us, or most people on the stream, we've watched the debates a week ago, and that was, I don't know, it was a slightly embarrassing, to put it very mildly. I mean, what's going on? What are your thoughts about Biden versus Trump? Yeah,
I want to know your. I feel like it must be so embarrassing for everyone in the EU watching. Like, oh, let's see what America, this giant, powerful country, let's see what leaders we're going to have to deal with soon. And then you see an old man that can barely speak and is falling asleep on stage that is incoherent. And then you have this tirading guy who's just speaking constantly, but nonsense. None of the words actually make sense. You're like, I thought my English was good, but Trump's not making any sense. Yeah. No, that's not you. And so most of the American public is so disenfranchised at this point, because it's already bad when it was Biden versus Trump, the last election.
Yeah.
But it's just gotten so much significantly worse with Biden's capabilities, but cognitively, that I've seen so many people just say, even though we would lose the name recognition, they would rather just get rid of Biden and just throw anyone in, because he's going to kill the Democrat Party. And then we'll have a convicted felon in the White House again. So it's just wild. This is, I know it's not first past the post, but it essentially works very similarly.
Yeah.
If the US had something like that, it would proportional voting. It would be amazing, but there's no bloody way that the Democrats or the Republicans would ever vote to remove power, because there's so much money in there. So it's
I know
going to be so depressing.
It's just, like it's the US, and there's like how many people? 300 and how many people? 340 million?
340 million or something.
340 million, something like that. And the two best guys, or the two best people, I should say, and you'd think, I should rephrase. You would think that the two people that were fighting for the presidency would be
healthy.
How can I put it? Yeah, healthy.
Cognitive.
You know what I mean? It's
because of that debate, it has sparked an internal debate within America, I've seen, where people really want to enact a age limit for the presidency. At this point, if you didn't know, the minimum age is 35. And there is no upper age limit. Personally, I'd genuinely love to see something like 70. And I know that might be a narrow window to some people, but just go retire if you're over 70. You know, you're not really, I feel like you get a lot of wisdom and experience as you get older, obviously. But then you get to a point where you're, especially with these two guys, they're falling off a bit. They're not necessarily in the same time zone as everyone else, you know? It's like, it's just not relevant to us.
For young people, it's not very representative either, is
it? Representative,
yeah, because you got two grandfathers, I can almost say, that are like literally fighting it out, and you're like, well, who's representing me? I mean, even if you look at the Senate with like Nancy Pelosi and what's the Republican guy's name?
Is it Mitch McConnell?
Yeah, there you go. He was also having cognitive issues, I'd say. Yeah,
he's had some. Yeah, he like just kind of freezes up and he has to reboot. It's bizarre.
But maybe one last question. What do you think will happen? Do you think Biden's going to run?
It's so difficult to know over there. Like, I'm so involved in the UK now that I'm so grateful that I can just look and be like, I don't have to really experience like the suffering for the next 4 years in the US of whoever wins, because I feel like it's going to be genuinely awful for whoever. Obviously, it'll be way worse with Trump, in my opinion, but I have no idea. Here's the thing, really quickly. I'm visiting my hometown for the first time. I've only gone back twice in my 12 years of living in the UK. And last time I visited was right before the Trump election. And beforehand, I thought, I'm in London, I'm in the UK, I've seen the news. Trump's obviously never going to win. He's crazy. As soon as I landed in the US, went to my hometown in Jersey, I went, oh no, this is very, very real. There's blue flags everywhere saying like cops' lives matter. And I was like, oh, the US has descended into madness. So who's to say?
Well, I mean, it's just, apparently half the population, a bit much, but a big part of the population sees something in Trump. And I mean, that's democracy in the end, right? If he gets elected, I guess. But yeah, it's not, I'll be very open. It's not someone I would vote for, but yeah.
Well, no, I'm not in the cult, so I don't, You're either in a cult or you just don't want to vote a cult leader in, because you don't like Biden, but you'd rather him than the cult leader. So
yeah. Evan, any last words before anything else you want to mention the UK election, or anything you want to mention to the 300 people I think are currently on the live stream?
Well, I'm excited for the next 5 years. Hopefully the UK can play nice with the EU. We can have some actual good relationships again.
Yeah,
Obviously,
yeah.
there's been some issues, but hopefully we can have a nice, stable friendship. And that's good. But
Awesome.
and like you said, my YouTube channel is all over the place. So sometimes I do politics, sometimes I don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for having me on.
No, I mean, that's also from my side. I really recommend everyone here and who's watching afterwards to really check out your channel. So check out our description because we've linked you there, or just search Evan Edinger. That's, I think you'll find him, our guest, very easily there. And to you, Evan, thank you so much for joining and your insights. That was really, really fun talking to you. So I appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, and I'll see you. Hopefully,
see you later. Good luck with the France bit because I've seen some things and it's gonna be rough.
We'll get there. At 8 o'clock, we're starting with France.
All right.
Yeah. All right. I'll talk to you later. Bye bye.
Cheers.
So that was Evan, as mentioned. Really do check him out. His link is in our description. He's really awesome. It's really cool that he joined us today. Right, before we get to our next guest, a quick shout out on our Patreon. Please do go and check it out if you want to support our work, support our videos, things like that. And if you want to give us any super chats or anything like that, we'd really, really do appreciate it because we're independent and we kind of survive on everyone here. So I appreciate it, everyone. Thank you. Now, we're not going to go to France just yet. We have one more guest joining us to talk about the UK. And his name is Brandon Miller. He is a filmmaker. And he's done work for the BBC, for the New York Times, and he also has a YouTube channel that is in our description. So again, check it out. It's high quality videos, something that we can also aspire to with some of our content. And yes, I think Brendan, I think you're here. So Brendan, hi, thank you so much for coming into our live stream.
Hey, thanks for having me. Awesome. I've followed some of your videos in the past. I've used some of your videos actually as examples for other people. So there was one on Viktor Orban, which I thought was really helpful. So right back at you.
Yeah, and thank you everyone in the crowd. Still, we're having a bit of issues with our overlay, but we'll fix that coming forward. Now we're going to focus on you, Brendan. Yeah. So Brendan, thank you for joining. So so the first question we're asking our guests is: I hope you're a bit of a football fan. We want to ask you: do you have a tip of who is going to win the Euro Cup before we get into politics?
Well, definitely not England.
Definitely not England.
Definitely not England. If you're English, you can't jinx these things by ever believing. And also, our quality of football has not been great. So I think it will probably be. I thought the Netherlands play well.
Yeah. Do you think so?
Yeah.
Okay. Not bad. I mean, I guess Turkey was close though yesterday. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. I feel like no one is really playing their best football. What about you?
I am thinking France, actually. I know they've not been playing well, but they always seem to get out of the bag. So I think I really do.
I can't.
I know. I can't
as much as I'd love to wish France well, the English football fan in me struggles.
Yeah, I completely get it. But I have a feeling that even though Spain is better, they'll find a way. Mbappe will score a goal. He's needing one. And then in the final, they'll either beat us or you.
They will definitely be us if we get there.
I don't know. We're friends now, Brendan, but I'm not sure how it's going to be in 3 days. All right, Brendan, thank you for joining for the third time.
And you guys I felt like you covered so much already with Evan. That was great.
Yeah, I know. Well, we'd love to also hear your perspective on things. And we've talked about Labour's big victory already, so maybe we can park that a little bit. But maybe you can enlighten us a bit about the Conservatives. What went wrong? Why have they gone from 370 seats all the way to 120?
Well, it's their worst ever result since the modern political party of the Conservatives was formed. So it's hard because we've known it's coming for a long time, and some of the polls were showing them down at 70 seats or even lower. The fact they got as many as they did, people are almost feeling like it's a relief, but it's easy to forget, like it is absolutely catastrophic. And I think it's going to be there's sort of different theories about what it means, but I think it's going to be very hard for them to put that coalition back together. Because, as you know, with the first past the vote system, you need to have this broad coalition. You need to sort of push away the extremists and have them in your camp, but you also need to be in the middle as well.
Yeah.
And the problem is that they've lost lots of votes to Reform, which is out on the far right, I just mean that descriptively. I have to be careful because Nigel Farage is very touchy about being described as far right, even if we, we have to describe, the political spectrum, but that's where they are. And he's lost them, and he's very hard to work with. He actually did a deal. He kind of did a deal last election, which really helped the Conservatives, which is one of the things which is sort of missing. Like in 2019, when Boris Johnson did really well, and he had this big majority, and everyone was talking about him being in power for 10 years. At that election, Nigel Farage actually held back MPs, reform from running in certain Tory seats, which gave them a boost. But he didn't do that this time. So the right was split. That was the main thing. Keir Starmer had made the Labour Party credible. He'd, all the three things that Labour is always weak on, law and order, do you love the country, and the economy. He built credibility, detoxified the brand. But then the Conservative Party imploded. It had all these prime ministers one after another.
Five, I think it was, right? Was it five since?
Well, you had May, Boris.
Yeah.
Since 2019, you had Boris, Liz Truss, and Rishi Sunak. But you had one after another. They felt chaotic. When Boris Johnson was in during the pandemic, there were parties going on in Downing Street, the Partygate scandal, and people were talking about their grandparents, dying. No one could go to the funeral at the same time. The Conservatives are having parties. The Queen, there was this famous picture of the Queen sitting alone at her husband's funeral, and she couldn't even be with other people. And so that was the big one. Partygate was huge. Then there was the mini budget in September 2022 when Liz Truss, who was this kind of weird, loony ideologue, like she used to be a Lib Dem, but anyway, she came and she was like, we're just going to have these massive unfunded spending commitments. And the markets, who you would think she would be kind of respectful of because she believes in markets, were like, no, you're crazy. And that caused everyone's mortgages to go up. So they lost their position on the economy. So you just had this sense of chaos and scandal. And, for reform voters, immigration has just gone up a lot. And for them, that's a big issue. They wanted to leave the EU because they were worried about migration,
and it went up.
And it's gone up and not the boats, the boats has caused a lot of media attention, but it's the legal migration. So they lost the Conservative Party. It needs this coalition, right? And on the right, it's lost all these voters to reform and split them. But on the center, they've lost a lot of voters through Brexit, through being really kind of extreme, being incompetent, spending quite a lot. All those traditional middle class areas of England, professionals, doctors, lawyers, people who would normally vote for Conservatives, naturally vote for Conservatives. They're saying, no, we can't do this. So it was like an exorcism. They were, let's get rid of the Tories. That was the main. I think that's kind of what this election was mostly. Even though I'm taking nothing away from Starmer's huge majority, and it must be respected, the overall sentiment was, let's do what we can, voters. Let's vote for Lib Dem. Let's vote for whoever we can to just get rid of the Tories.
Maybe just quick for everything you've told us now. Let me have a quick explain it to the audience, because maybe some of you might be very EU focused. So basically, what happened in 5, 6, or longer, even 8. I think how long ago Brexit? 2016, right? So the vote.
That's when the vote was.
Exactly. That was Cameron was in control, was the prime minister back then. After it was voted for Brexit, then we had a phase of Boris Johnson, I think it was.
You had Theresa May. So she was
Theresa May. There you go.
So she'd come in and she was meant to deliver it,
and she didn't.
Struggled.
Because of many reasons. Nothing against Theresa May, but And then I think, if I'm not wrong, then Boris Johnson came along. He had a couple of scandals, and then you had a very quick session of Liz Truss, who messed up on the economy, just like you just explained. And then basically we had Rishi Sunak until now, and now we have Keir Starmer. So that's basically the history since.
It's been a kind of mess. Basically, they voted. David Cameron agreed to give this referendum on the EU because he thought he would win. It'd be easy. He just won one about Scottish independence, and he hoped that would appease the kind of reform types, the Brexit types, the UKIP types, and he didn't. And then they went on to run a bad campaign, and so to shore up his own party support, they promised this referendum. Then he thought that in 2015 they were going to win this election, but only with a minority, and he would go back into coalition with another party, and the other party, they were all against leaving the EU. So he'd say, okay, to make this coalition, we'll drop this. He thought he made this promise, think he'd never have to deliver it.
Yeah,
and it all went wrong.
I mean, it wasn't just you that were shocked. We were shocked in the EU too. Or no, I don't think it was just people in the UK.
Yeah, whenever I go to Europe and I'm talking to people, after a while I get kind of like I was in Finland, and I was in a sauna, and it was a traditional sauna. I'd gone in and I'd taken all my clothes off. It's very traditional, and I'm really nervous. And there's all these butch, like big Finnish men in there, and it was dark. And I went and sat down, and like one of them said to me, "English?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then he just went, "Brexit." And then the whole sauna started laughing at me, and I was like, "Yeah, fair."
Yeah, it's a big topic, isn't it? When we meet, I've got the same thing when I meet. I'm my British friends. I've studied in the UK, so I know quite a few people in the UK, and it doesn't take more than like a couple hours until the EU and Brexit is a topic. Even today, which is like so long after. We have a question from the chat, Brendan, that I'd like to ask you. It's from Niall Murray, so thank you for the question. What do you think will be Labour's first top priority in government? Is there anything that you... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's quite interesting, because last time there was a Labour landslide, within days, they announced this independence for the Bank of England, which was this, like, it's now seen as a very sensible thing. It was a good move, but it was a big shock. And they hadn't talked about it in the election campaign. And so some people are saying, hey, he's got this big majority. And last time Labour were in, people also said that Tony Blair, who was the guy who won it, had sort of squandered his opportunity. He had this big majority. It was slightly bigger than now, 179. He could do whatever he likes. And for the first term, he sort of didn't spend lots of money. He didn't make these big changes. And so some people are saying, look, maybe they'll do a big surprise like the Bank of England. And maybe they've learned from the past, because some of the people who are around Blair are in government advising Keir Starmer now, that not to waste this opportunity. But I think that's unlikely, because we're trying to get to know Keir Starmer. He's quite an interesting, he seems very boring in many ways, but it's quite hard to get a read on him, because he's kind of got this ruthless streak. He came to power by promising people on the left of the Labour Party that he would be very progressive, and he was on their side. And then once he was leader, he just moved right to the middle, and which is what you have to do. You have to, in that process. But it was, and he's been quite ruthless about getting rid of certain MPs who he sees as sort of disloyal, or he got rid of Jeremy Corbyn, who was the ex-leader of the Labour Party, because he kicked him out of the party. So he's quite ruthless. So the things we definitely know that they've talked about, and that they have this kind of mandate, this kind of the civil servants and the House of Lords, the people who might stop things, they have this mandate for. One is planning reform to get more houses built. That is something which doesn't cost the government a lot of money, and they don't have a lot of money, but could actually get economic growth going, which they need. They need the economic growth, because otherwise they have to push in all these tax cuts or public service spending cuts. That's because the situation is so tight. So the only way they can get out of it is the economy grows, they get more taxes in, and then they don't have to be like this, repeat austerity. We know about planning. They've talked a little bit about NHS reform, like trying to get more sort of value, more healthcare out of the money that's already being spent. Because actually the Tories, who are very hated on the Conservatives, actually put more doctors and nurses and money into the NHS, but people didn't feel that. They can't get appointments with a doctor. They can't struggle. So planning an NHS reform. I don't think they're going to go back into the EU.
That was my next question, actually. So you're going there straight away.
I think Starmer, when we first got to know him, because he's quite new to the political scene, Like, I've been, like a lot of the people in frontline Labour politics, when I used to work in political television a lot, I've met them. So I met Rachel Reeves. Like, all these people have been around for a while, but Keir Starmer, he came out of nowhere, sort of thing. He was a kind of clean skin. And when we first got to know him as the public, he was so Remain. He was super pro-European. But I just think I think they're sincere that they can't go back into anything which is free movement of people.
Yeah, which is the
immigration thing, which is the thing. They'd love more trade. Maybe there might be something with young people. I've seen some suggestions of that, like if you're under 25, because that would, I mean, obviously as you probably know, the needs immigration because of the way our economy is, but it's just, I just think they think that would destroy their coalition, and I think they genuinely think it's not just they believe it, that they don't want to do immigration. So, but I don't know. Also, I guess the question I'd have for you almost is like, what's this sort of attitude the other way? Because Europe seems to be changing quite quickly at the moment.
You mean how we feel towards the relationship?
Whether they want like a closer deal with.
I mean, so it depends where you stand. I think, like, if you want more EU, more EU integration, going more to a federal model, even. I mean, that's, again, I mean, I wouldn't say extreme, but that's only a few people that want that at the moment, I think. Then I think it's a good thing if you believe that, because I think UK did have a role within the EU that was not really in favor of that, at least not in the last 10 years, 15 years. And they held a lot back. So I think if you want more integration on the EU level, then it might be a good thing. I think certain things like the Corona package that was passed with the UK, I'm not sure if that would have happened. And there's plenty more examples like that. But on the other end, if you're more, there's a big political group in the EU now called the Reformists, the ECR, European Conservatives and Reformists, which was made by Cameron back in the day, I think. If you're more of that side of where you're like, the EU's good for certain things, but we want to leave a lot of power with the nation states. If you're more there, I feel that you miss the UK, because the UK was also one that was driving that agenda. We're like, look, some things we can do together, but a lot needs to stay at the nation state. So I think it very much depends on where you sit on the EU integration or EU disintegration spectrum, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
I mean, there was a you Remain argument, which went something like, we need to stay in Europe to stop it being strong.
Yeah.
It was saying the principle of British foreign policy for the last 400 years is to stay involved in the continent, balancing powers off against each other. If they're all strong and united, then we're toast. So
yeah. I mean, one thing that and this channel, so EU Made Simple, our channel stands for this. One thing we very, very much believe in is that the veto vote that countries have in the EU when it comes to foreign policy is counterproductive. We feel it's very difficult to manage it, especially with people like Hungary and Orban. Nothing against Hungary, but Orban is very much blocking EU policies, and we feel that's something that could be reformed. However, I know the UK was definitely not a fan of reforming that. So they probably would like to keep their veto. So in that sense, it might be good that the UK left, if you believe of removing the veto vote. Yeah.
So I don't know in terms of so I think they would like closer alignment. They would like more trade. Again, it's something that would help the economy, which they're talking, growth is our #1 priority and everything, which is quite unusual for a sort of a left-wing party, but it's very centrist. It's very kind of in keeping with Starmer's effort to detoxify the brand. They definitely like more trade, but the free movement would be the thing that would stop it. But the question is also what's going to happen. He's got this huge majority. Like, what happens to the political energy, right? And part of it's going to go into the left inside the Labour Party. So you have this opposition between sort of the governing Labour centrist group, the people who are in power, and then there's going to be a lot of MPs who don't have a job and probably are not going to get a job quickly, who kind of got nothing to do. What happens is they become more rebellious. There's certain issues where, like we've already seen with Gaza. So 5 Labour MPs lost their seats to independent campaigns or campaigns that coming from the left. There were another 5 from the Green Party. you know, the energy, you know, the Tories are divided and destroyed for a while, and they're quite ruthless in their sort of history of coming back and reinventing themselves. But last time this happened, it took them a while. So maybe they're off to one side for a while. But where's the energy going to go? Is it going to come from the left? Are you going to see a kind of soft left opposition? So one issue is that, which is already bubbling away, is that there's a welfare cap on the number of children. So you're given welfare benefits for 2 children. And then when you have 3 or 4, you don't get anything extra for that.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's
That was introduced by George Osborne. It was a very sort of seen as a very right-wing austerity measure. And Starmer and Rachel Reeves, who's his chancellor, they've kept that. They've kept that. And they said that, look, we haven't got the money. And it's quite interesting because the traditional, you know, like Gordon Brown, who was, you know, the chancellor who went with Tony Blair, who's this kind of, and he would always have this phrase, prudence for a purpose. And the idea was like, we are safe with the money. We cut expenditure when we need to. We put up taxes, but we're very good on the economy. We do that for a purpose. We're prudent for a purpose. Now, if a Labour Party is going to like help child poverty rise in this way, or not reach for this method of reducing child poverty, then what's the purpose, right? It comes back to that question, you know, what's the point of power without principles? I mean, the reply is, what's the point of principles without power? And you have to kind of bring these together. But so far, it does seem like they're holding the line on that, but that's going to be an issue. So yeah, whether you're going to get a growing like position from the left, the other place it can come from is the media. The media is it's more right-wing than it used to be for kind of economic reasons. Like it's as a shrinking market, it gets more of the reason why people buy those papers is sort of ideological. So they've become.
You made a great video on that, by the way. I remember seeing it.
You watched that?
Yeah, I watched it. Yeah. So again, everyone in the chat, check it out. You made a video on the newspapers in the UK.
Yeah, the weird politics of UK newspapers. Yeah, I had a great a guy called Mick Wright I was talking to about it, and he's just someone who's real insight into the agendas and the kind of the brand, like what's going on beneath the surface, right? And we all know like the Sun's left and the the Sun's to the right and the Daily to the right, but kind of the nuances on some of that he was great. He really like helped me pull that.
No, really interesting. We need a version of that for our I know German, Dutch, French newspapers, you know.
Well, now that's now you're talking.
Yeah.
Give me an idea. Turn it into a series.
Maybe let me ask you something. What we're seeing in the EU. So in the EU at the moment, and also in I live in Germany. I'm not German, but we see the rise of right wing or far right. Even I know some people don't like that wording. Parties growing. Like even in Germany in the EU elections, the second biggest winner was a far right party. In France tonight, we have the right wing populists that are looking to take a lot, maybe even win the whole thing. Who knows? Yeah. And do you see something similar in the UK? Because when I look at this picture, I see 5 seats for reform. I'm thinking, wow, you guys are going against the trend. Or am I wrong?
Well, obviously, I mean, what that result misses is that, you know, reform had a huge number of votes. You know, they got 4.1 million votes. I mean, if you think but they only got 5 MPs. And if you think the Lib Dems, they got 72 MPs, but they got, sorry, this is a bit confusing. So 4.1 million votes gives you 5 MPs, 3 million votes. So just like fewer votes, 6.6 million fewer votes. And they got 72 MPs. Yeah, so the distortions are off the charts, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, let me just interrupt you just so viewers can see. Look, viewers here, 12% for Lib Dems, 14% for reform. That's the percentage of all the voters. Yeah. We now go to seats. Reform 5 seats, Lib Dems 72. I mean, it's crazy. It's just confusing, huh? I guess. Yeah.
It's the name of the game in British politics, and that's why, you know, this is what I mean. You know, this is what the Conservatives are now going to have to deal with, is because their vote is split, so they could come second all over the country and they get no seats, right? So there's no, once if you're coming second, you're just discounted completely. So you have to come first. And that's what we saw. We saw a lot of tactical voting. So people are saying, I'm not a natural Lib Dem voter, but I'm going to vote for them because that's the only chance to get rid of the Tories and so on. But this question of like what's going on. So there is definitely this vote for like nativist. I don't think it's racist. I say that in a sort of just in terms of having a scout mindset rather than a warrior mindset. This idea, just try and understanding the terrain. Not so. I don't think that there's also racist voters, but their actual ideology is much more: our people first. We're kind of better than other people. I don't like outsiders. It's more of a nativist ideology, which is a sort of idea from American academia.
Yep.
And but I don't. The thing that's really interesting to me about what's going on in France is that it seems to have more youth involvement, and that's just not the story
in the UK.
I think we're seeing in the UK. I mean, the vote for reform is old. That is the single. If you want to know anything about it, what demographic gets you there quick, it's old. I mean, this is like the Remain Leave vote. It was the same question. A lot of those Leave voters were old. I mean, I don't know, like probably a fifth of them are already dead. It's just so. But there is this. So there's big question which is underlying. Like what I often try and do in my videos is look for what are the ideas, the structures, the models beneath the news. The news is going on every day, but what's these? And one of the big questions in that is, where's the kind of alignment at the moment? So some people say, if the reform, it's just a dead end. Demographics are changing. The younger voters, they're not turning conservative like they used to. Even when they're sort of in their 40s, they're still socially liberal. They've just grown up in a different world to these other reform voters. They want, and everyone is like more in, so that sort of trend is against the conservatives and reform vote.
That might be interesting then in the future, right? It might change completely in the future then. Yeah.
Well, I think I don't understand enough about what's going on in France or these other countries to know, because the other thing that strikes me in the British reporting of what's going on in France is that it's just like the country has become more fascist. But from a sort of naive outsider point of view, it also seems to me clear that Le Pen and that party, they've moved, like, in a similar way almost to
Maloney.
Well, also, I was actually thinking about Northern Ireland. So in Northern Ireland, you had these moderate parties on the two sides, pro-Britain, pro-Ireland. And what's happened is the moderate parties have disappeared. And you've got the kind of the traditionally extreme parties, like the IRA party with the Sinn Féin. But they've moved. They are no longer the same, extremists that they were. They have moved. And now they're a very popular party. They, at one point, people are talking about them. They're the most popular party in Northern Ireland, and they almost doing quite well in the Republic of Ireland as well. And this question of like what you have to do to win in these systems is you own the extremes and then you move to the center. And that's what I think is going to be hard for the Conservative, because they've got this. How do they bring this extreme group back in a way? Nigel Farage, like I've met him many times. Because I used to work on Question Time, which is the main politics show on TV in the UK, and he would come on a lot because his party was getting lots of votes, and it was very controversial. That people are like, why is Nigel Farage on all the time? Because his party gets loads of votes, and he was the most he was the person, because it's kind of a one-man party. It still is. And so he would always come on, and he he's an autocrat. He can't work with other people. Like, so you've got 5 reform MPs at the moment. There won't be 5 reform MPs at the end of this parliament, because they will split up. They'll break up. Like he's got a track record. When you look at all the people he brought into the EU Parliament, they don't last, because they can't work with him, or he can't work with them, or he gets jealous, or I don't what's going on there. But it's so how to do a deal with Farage to bring those in, I don't know. I think it's going to be very tricky for the Conservative Party. And the interesting thing about the Conservative Party is they almost don't seem to feel like they have a problem. They, listening to them, reading the articles, talking to them, a lot of them are saying, no, we're a bit kind of incompetent and sloppy, and Boris was a bit of a mess. All we need to do is just be kind of sensible, go back to being like sensible and grown up, and Labour Party will implode at some point, and then we just take it back. And I don't know, maybe they're right, but that seems to me very complacent. I think they need to think like, how can they stitch together this coalition that could move Starmer off the center ground and keep their flank? I think that's going to be very tough, partly because of the personalities involved.
Exactly. And I think the quick question here from the comments, which I think is interesting, from Niall Murray. Thank you, Niall, for your question. Could Labour keep reform at bay in the future by being hard on immigration, similar to how Denmark subdued the far right? Do you think that, because maybe before you answer quickly, I know that the main issue for many people, again, the AfD in Germany, is migration is always the number one issue why people are voting for them. So yeah, let me know.
Yeah, and I used to see that. So on this Question Time program, so it's a debate program, but it's in front of a studio audience, and studio audience picks the issues of the program. So what we would do is, and I worked there from 2011 or something, like quite early on, and we'd get these questions in from the audience, and every week the pile that had most questions was immigration.
Yeah, there you go.
People would say, like, why are you talking about immigration again? Like, why? And it's like, this is, we go around the country, and this is not everywhere, but people just wanted to talk about it. So yeah, it is a big issue. I don't know what Labour's going to do, because I actually don't know whether they have something that would satisfy people on immigration. I don't think what their policy would be. They could, I think they won't provoke on the issue, which would be going back into the single market or customs union, having that free movement. That would obviously be a provocation. But are they going to tighten the immigration system?
Yeah, exactly that.
I don't think so. They're not talking about doing that. And the economic cost of that, when they're talking about growth, is the number one priority. That's going to be hard. So, I mean, this is also the interesting thing for reform voters is, what has to happen on the right. I know that's kind of where we started, was they have to learn that splitting leads to the other side winning, right? And it's not just the leaders of the parties, but it's the voters too, right? If they've all voted for reform, and reform mean that there's no Tories and Labour have a landslide, is that going to help them in their priorities? So, but yeah, I don't know no, I don't think so. I don't think they're going to do what has happened in Denmark. So yeah, I think
is that the right approach though? Because I sometimes think if you tackle the issue and then maybe you don't get these, I
agree. Yeah. I think there's a debate around, what to do with these issues. Like, do you try and sort of placate or deal with the issue, or do you kind of exclude? And I think you've got a kind of Macron, like, let's just sort of push them off to one side and isolate and say they're all racist. And that isn't the tradition normally in British politics. And I don't get that mood from the Labour Party. But I can't see anything that's going to, so what they're talking about is, Keir Starmer says, I used to be the director of public prosecution. So I was a crime fighter, and these are criminal gangs. And what we need to do is we're going to set up a border force, and we'll infiltrate, and then we'll just kind of fix it in this technocratic way. But that's the boats, and the boats is actually just a kind of a distraction from the bigger issue, which is really high levels of legal migration and an economy in terms of, like, all old people are in care homes that require cheap labor, and we without that immigration, we have a falling population. Like, there's just the system is built on high levels of migration, the economic system. And
Brendan, sorry to interrupt you. It's very interesting, but the French results are in. Maybe you'd like to stay on for a couple minutes and we can look at them together. Are you interested in that? Or
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I'm
happy to if you have someone who is an expert on French. I'm very happy to hand over. Don't worry.
No, not yet. We can. Can you see this on my stream? I'm not sure if people can see on the chat. So these are the estimates at the moment.
Wow.
And that is quite interesting. So let me try and decide for this. So for everyone in the chat, so we have the Republicans with the lowest projection at the moment, excluding the others. They're the right-wing conservative.
They've held them back, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean. This is very interesting. Then we have Rassemblement National. That's the National Rally, the dark blue on the right. They're projected 135 to 165 seats. Okay, interesting.
Second or third, am I?
That can't be right. Is this the right image? Let me just check. Okay. And then, anyway, and the Ensemble is Macron's party, who is in second, could be in second. And then the Niveau Front Populaire, which exactly, yep.
They look like they're going to be first.
It looks like it, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, that is fascinating. Yeah.
So is this almost, I mean, obviously, Macron would have preferred his group to be in the ascendancy, but this is not the disaster that,
I mean,
like, right, compared to what was, the people were thinking the RN would get the majority.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it could still happen because they're ranges, right? Okay. Wow, very, very interesting. But I mean, this is a good result for Macron in the end of the day, if you ask me. I mean, considering the poll, it's not a good result, but considering the polls, it was a good
Given
result.
The expectations.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
that is fascinating because I think that, it looks like they failed to win the majority.
Yeah. So, I mean, what could this mean? I mean, Brendan, I'm not sure how deep you're in French politics, but what I've been thinking about before the call, that there's really like 3 scenarios, right? One scenario, National Rally wins the whole thing. I mean, that is not looking likely. It's looking far from likely, right? She needs almost 300 seats for that, and she does nowhere near it. Second scenario, which I thought could happen, is that, I always forget the name. The New Popular Front. There we go. The Nouveau Front Populaire could win a majority. Less likely, and that's not happening. So I guess the third scenario would be Macron could create a coalition really against the far right.
You're going to have. It looks like you'd have a hung parliament, right? If it's the coalition that wins, so you're going to have some kind of coalition. Yeah.
I mean, I guess if they don't find a coalition, then it will be a hung parliament. But there's also talk about Macron potentially working with some of the Republicans and some of the people from the New Popular Front, which could also be a possibility.
So Macron can cobble something together from all this. Wow.
Yeah.
When the results come in overnight? Is that right?
Yeah, they're coming in overnight. These are just projections.
Oh wow!
I'm just chatting with the backroom team because they're also saying that there's a victory speech. Brendan, I think we're over time anyway, so I kind of have to move on with our program. I think first of all, everyone that's on the live stream, check out Brendan Miller's YouTube channel. I mentioned already the video he made on the UK newspaper, which is super interesting. And you've got great content. So thank you so much for coming, Brendan. And have a great night with the results, looking at yourself. Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you so much. All right. Bye-bye. All right. Okay. I think there's also a live speech coming in from the UK, the French elections. So bear with us, everyone on the live stream. We're going to try and share it with you over the live stream.
Must be strictly respected from now on. So now, no tricks.
Oh, there's some questions coming in. The voting has not ended. While we're waiting for the sound, the voting has ended, and the results
is ready. The new Popular Front
are now being
will
talked about, but these are not the final results. They're
mandate
basically the projections.
that the votes given to its candidate. We will keep our word. The new Popular Front will
So yeah, I'll be
apply
quiet so you can
the
listen to the
program,
when the sound is
just the
back on.
program, but all the program. Indeed, this program is a whole of which you cannot separate the different parties, the revenues, the expenditures, nor the coming into force of the different measures it contains. As soon as this summer the measures planned in this program can be made by decree without voting, banning retirement age at 64 years, so increasing the minimum income, keeping prices down, and the increases and negotiations of salaries by sector, the moratorium on large useless works. We have already said last week, and we are confirming this to the President of the Republic, we refuse to enter negotiations with his political party to do combinations, and especially after fighting relentlessly for 7 years his social mistreatment policy and ecological inaction, and the vote of the French people has confirmed that we had good reasons to do so, and especially after that the votes have disavowed him, especially since the new Popular Front, despite all what we went through, defamation, all insults, and the major place that the people has given it. From now on, the ballots have been cast between radically opposed projects. The new Popular Front is ready to govern. It is the only alternative which is built consistent with solidarity, with an organized program which has been costed its different components. The unified left has raised to this historical challenge, and in their own way they have bypassed the trap. Once again, it saved the Republic. Once again, it can start. It can start the ecological, social work that our people, our time, our world, our Europe need so much. Friends, comrades, men and women throughout the country, you are waiting, you have been waiting for this moment with emotions against all prognosis, thanks to your commitment, your loyalty to the instructions that were given. Listen to the poet when it's singing France, to the beautiful sunshine in Provence, from the north to the south. There is something in the air now that is transparent, and the taste of happiness that makes my lips dry, my friends.
So Jean-Luc Melenchon there speaking, the head of La France Insoumise, saying that the president must respect this decision, the outcome of the elections, according to our estimations that we have. He said that the Prime Minister must go. He said this result is thanks to the civic energy of the people who mobilised in the last couple of days against the far right. If you've just joined us, we can just explain to you exactly what the outcome is so far.
Just a recap of what just been said. So basically, that was Melenchon. He is part of the Nouveau Front Populaire, so basically the new Popular Front. New Popular Front. They're basically the big left-wing coalition that has been formed, right after Macron announced the elections. And they were not expected to win. They were I could hear myself, so let me just turn that off. Oh, 1 second. Okay, there we go. I'm back now. Sorry about that. So they were not expected to win it. They were polling in second place for basically the entire 3-4 weeks of the election. As you just heard, Melenchon, he is part of the more far left wing part of the coalition, and he has very clearly stated that he does not want to do a coalition with either the centrist Macron's party, and also not with the right wing or far right end of the political spectrum. So what does that mean? That basically means he's calling for a hung parliament, or that's the English phrase, but basically, no majority within the parliament, which is very, very interesting. And we'll have to see what happens. Wow. Okay. What does everyone think in the chat? Any feedback on the election, on what you think just happened? Because what we'll have now soon, in like 15 minutes, we're going to have a French person, I should say, from EU&U. They are a Instagram account, and she will be on here in 10-15 minutes, and we will talk about what these results all mean. So we'll show you exactly the results in a more detailed manner than we have here now today, in 15 minutes, and talk everything through. All right, let's see if there's any questions. So we have one from, I think it's a Greek person in the chat. Sorry, I can't pronounce what it says there. But he says, personally, I am worried with the Popular Front in case of factionalism. Okay? What do you say, EU Made Simple? To be honest, I am super surprised about these results. And I think it's going to be, there you go. Someone said it. It's going to be ungovernable. I really don't know what kind of coalition can be formed. Let me just outlay the options again of what I think could happen, but unlikely. The first one is that there is some sort of coalition that can be made. As you can see from the results, there's no coalition. There's no absolute majority anywhere. So normally what would happen is you form a coalition. But the left, so the Nouveau Front Populaire, is already a coalition of green parties, of left parties, of far left parties, everything put together. And now they would have to work with they're never going to work with National Rally, obviously, because that's far right. It's completely different ideology. The Republicans are not going to work with because they're right wing, and they're also very different than Nouveau Front Populaire. And they already mentioned in the speech earlier, at least Melenchon mentioned, that they're not going to work with Ensemble, who is Macron. So if they don't want to work with any of those, what other possibilities are there than a government that's not functioning or a parliament that's not functioning? Before the results tonight, Macron did clearly state, or not state officially, but there was rumors and talk about him wanting to create a coalition with the Republicans, some of the Republicans, and some of the people in Nouveau Front Populaire. There are some far left parties within the New Popular Front that he doesn't want to work with, so those are out. But there are other parties which are less far left that he was considering to work with. So it's a very interesting result, and we do not know so yet, of course, what will happen. I am working on a video. I actually prepared a whole video with the results that I thought were going to happen, but that video is now out of date, and I'm going to have to change everything tonight of what the possible scenarios are. Anyone that's tuning right in, I said, what the fuck just happened, lol? Basically, what happened is National Front is not winning. They're currently expected to be third place. National Rally, Le Pen. First place is expected to be the New Popular Front. Basically, they're a coalition of left-wing, Greens, etc. Everything on the left spectrum of the French politics. They're number one at the moment. Second is Macron with his Ensemble party, and third is National Rally. If these polls come true, so it's very important to mention here that these are just the exit polls. Tomorrow morning we will know the final result. But one thing is clear: this is very, very unexpected. Unexpected, sorry. Anyway, so in 10 minutes, so at 8:30, so in 10 minutes CET, we're going to have a French person here who can explain this in a lot more detail, and she might have a lot more ideas of what will happen than I do. So definitely stay on for now. I'm going to take a quick break. I need some water and and get my head around these results. I'll be back at 8:30. So please stay on. I know you're all very keen to see what happened and everything, but we will have an analysis of the results at 8:30. So I'll be right back. And thank you very much for dialing in so far. And we are back. So we had to take a small break, I think, to basically process what the hell happened. Sorry, my language, but what the hell happened in France? This is very, very unexpected. And thank God I have an amazing guest with us today, because I know nowhere near enough about French politics to analyze this in the detail that we would like to do for you. So basically, what we have is Morgane. She is working at the European Commission in macroeconomics. And she is a writer for EU&U. EU&U is basically a Instagram account or a brand where they present EU topics in a simple and really, really cool way. And yeah, she was here. She can join us today. All her links and her Instagrams and everything are in the description, so check that out. And Morgane, great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining the live stream. How are you? How are you?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, thanks for having us. I mean, I'm still processing everything. So yeah, I have 3 screens around me and I try to, aggregate all the projection that we have to, make sense of everything. So yeah.
It's crazy, no? It's crazy. This is not expected. Not expected.
No, but I mean, I think those past 3 weeks have been crazy anyway. So it's kind of, I mean, it's not even the final things.
I know.
Yeah, it's a projection, and then we're gonna see what's happened next. So this is kind of step-by-step crazy process. Yes.
Crazy process. Yes, crazy process. I mean, maybe the first, maybe just to get viewers into the understanding what's going on. So maybe I'll quickly explain. We have on the screen here, we have a projected parliament. As Morgane said, these are projections. It's not 100% in stone. We will know that tomorrow morning. And you can see here that the biggest currently projected is the New Popular Front. This is a group. I mean, Morgane, this is a group of far left-wing alliance, so to speak, right?
Yeah, basically the left coalition. So this includes the far left, but it also includes the socialists, and it also includes the Greens, which makes it is a more big group of many different political parties. Yeah, that's right. We should keep it in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, and Melenchon is also a part of that big coalition, right? Because he had a speech earlier where he talked about what they want for the country. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, actually, he talked really early because I was listening. Listening to the news this afternoon. He was supposed to talk a bit late, but I think the results were so crazy that he couldn't really manage to wait until 10 p.m. So yeah, indeed, he's part of this big group. So yeah, he's part of the winners. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we'll go into more detail in a minute. I mean, second place projections is currently Ensemble, and that is Morgane is Macron's party, right? Is that like a coalition, or how can I imagine Ensemble?
No, exactly. It's basically Macron's party. I mean, there is another centrist party, but basically, just keep in mind it's Macron. Yeah, it's a presidential party right now. Yeah. Right.
And then in third place, so that just get everyone on the same page, we have a National Rally, which is Le Pen's and Bardella's party, right? On the dark blue on the bottom here. Yeah. So then,
exactly.
And maybe the first question, what surprised you the most? What was the craziest thing of tonight so far?
I mean, it's a bit tough to say because, we had the projection following the first round, but the projection are never really reliable because this election is at local level. So each constituency elects one MP, basically. So we have 577 seats, which basically represent the 577 constituencies. So when you do the projection following the first round, you just allocate seats following the distribution of share for the entire country. So those projections are never reliable at all. So you always have to wait for the second round. So yeah, I mean, of course, it's surprising. At the same time, it's also followed the dynamics, like the voting trade dynamics since the past few months, even in the polls. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's just the whole process of this snap election, anyways, are super surprising. So is it the result that surprised me the most? I'm not sure. I'm just really, looking forward for what's going to happen next. Like, who's going to be our next prime minister? How will the government be composed, and what will be the dynamics? Those are the real question right now.
Right. And I mean, the polls before, they showed National Rally as the number one, I guess, right? As supposed to win the most seats. So they were even talking about an absolute majority, which I think you need 270 seats for a majority. About how many seats?
289 seats, yeah.
There you go, 289. And they are 130 off, which was very unexpected, I guess.
Yeah, well, there had been different dynamics. So for the second round, basically for some kind of what they call the Republican front, the third candidate. For some consistency, we had three candidates for the second round, which is already kind of peculiar, but it's because for the past few years now, we have this three-party representation within our political environment, which is like kind of new for us. And especially actually the far left, the left coalition decided to remove the third candidate to make sure that the voting share will shift to the Republican candidate, which is basically Renew versus Le Pen. So this was one of the political strategies to avoid a wide wave of the Rassemblement National to take more seats in the parliament. And then there is always, this kind of, during the second round, we had an increase in participation. So we will never exactly know, what the gap between the two round turnouts, who actually benefited the most out of it. But, that second round, usually you wake up and you're like, do I really want this person to be an MP or not? So this might also have played in the dynamics. And as I said, really this kind of local level election, it's full of surprises for the second round. It's the predictions are always completely biased. So
Yeah, I mean, just for the viewers to quickly explain that we're all a quick explainer of how it works in France. You might have not seen the video I created on it. So in France, there's a 2-round system. And Morgane, of course, jump in if I'm saying something wrong, but it's a 2-round system. And the first round, basically, in all of the constituencies within France, all the parties can run their representatives there, and the French people vote for 4, 5, maybe even 6 parties and their representatives as they see fit. Then what happens is they have 2 choices. Well, 2 things could happen. In that constituency, one person or one party and person could get over 50% of the vote. That means they win the constituency and they go into the parliament. But that doesn't always happen. Actually, most likely is it doesn't happen. And you have multiple parties hovering around 20, 30%. And then what would happen is they would go into a second round, which is what happened tonight, just that everyone's on the same page. And there, basically, there's 2 parties. Normally, there could be 3, more normally 2, though. And then normally one would get over 50%, and that is then the winner of the constituency, just so that everyone knows how it works. Is that correctly explained, Morgane?
Yeah, no, it's correctly explained. Basically, you can have one winner, which was not, it's not the common case, but we had already like approximately 80 seats allocated following the first round. So we had basically 80 winners following the first round. Then it is the most common, situation. You have basically 2 candidates for the second round, because to be eligible to the second round, you need to receive more like 12.5% of the registered voters. Which, so this is not always the case. But once again, following this new political landscape in France, we have really like 3 blocks. And this is actually really well represented, right, in the composition of the new assembly. So that kind of made eligible a third candidate in a lot of consistencies.
Right. And I mean, there's also been it looks like there's been a lot of tactical play here, because if I'm not mistaken, didn't Macron and so the Ensemble Party and Union of the Left, so basically the New Popular Front, retract candidates for the second round? That's what happened, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's what happened. It's what they call the Front Républicain, also meaning that, we're gonna put out a lot of different strategy to make sure that there will be like one Republican candidate in front of the National Rally candidate. But that strategy, let's just avoid it's polarized the voting patterns, right? So that's it.
And were you surprised that Macron won? I mean, he didn't win anything yet, but that Macron's projected this well, or how do you interpret his performance here?
I don't know. I'm not that surprised. First, because of the strategy that we just mentioned before. This is not. I mean, I'm not that surprised that they're still here. The base, there's still a base that would prefer voting for Renew versus voting for the left, or versus voting for the right. So I mean, they lost it. I mean, during the 2022 legislative election, following this election, they had a relative majority. They didn't have the absolute one. They were not happy with this, but at least they were quite low. They had like 240 seats. So they
lost quite a lot. Yeah.
Quite a lot indeed. And also, I mean, we can also discuss the Rassemblement National seats, and even if they're not the winner of this election, they have increased the number of seats, quite significantly. So they're not completely losing, they're they're not real losers neither, I would say,
Yeah. No, interesting. I mean, we have a question in the chat. Maybe I can ask you, and that is from Kim Lawson. Thank you, Kim. Which parties do you think the government will be made of, or will France have a technocratic government? Lots of speculation. Do you have any thoughts around that?
I mean, I will try to stay super far away from crystal ball science, you know, but
we love crystal ball science here. It's just, we love to think of what could happen.
But I mean, that's a good question. Okay, let's say that if the Rassemblement National had been the first one, it would have been like, with the absolute majority, it would have been sure that Bardella would have been prime minister. It was the only thing that was sure,
And just interrupt you, just for people to know, Bardella, he is the right-hand man, I guess, from Le Pen, right? So Le Pen is going for the presidency, he's going for the prime minister, right? That's
and he was actually also leading the list for the European election. This guy was an MEP,
Right.
He was one before. So that was the only thing that we were sure, because even if the the Rassemblement National didn't get the absolute majority, but the relative one, Bardella said that he would not accept being prime minister under that terms, because then he wouldn't have been able, to like apply the policies and apply the promises that they were making. So and then we have with the relative majority the left, and this is going to be interesting, because I think Melenchon is, it's creating a lot of cleavage, and because the left, once again, it's not one political party, it's a composition of different political parties with different vision, different ideology, different political programs. So of course, like, to set up the coalition, they had to make agreements, negotiation, and to find a line. But Mélenchon as a prime minister, it seems really tricky. It seems really dangerous, and I'm not sure it's going to be, super consensual. So this is really have to be seen.
So just to build on your point here, so you mentioned this is Wikipedia, great source, New Popular Front, I'm just looking at, and you mentioned it, right? This is a coalition of loads of parties. I mean, look at this. All of these parties are part of, so we have La France Insoumise, that's Mélenchon, like you mentioned, and we have all of these below. I mean, you don't have to go through every single one of them that make up this massive coalition, right? That's what you're saying.
But I mean, the three main one are basically Mélenchon party, so La France Insoumise, just kind of the far left, and the Greens and the Socialists. And even if the Socialists, I mean, right now it doesn't mean, I won't say it doesn't mean anything, but their support base have been eroding a lot during the past few years. But the Socialist Party, like a couple of years ago, was kind of one of the main ones. So we can really see the different line. This one is, I mean, the Rose Party, yes.
And this links very closely to a question we have from Thank You, Murph, for your question. And that is, how is the union of the left structured? So we're looking at that now. What parties inside the coalition have the most power and influence? And what may they want for France? So I think you kind of answered it, but maybe if you could explain it again. So which are the biggest, strongest parties? You mentioned the Socialists, right? This party?
We'll add also Place Publique, so which is the one just below the one that you're showing right now. So Place Publique, the movement that have been set up by Glucksmann, and we have Aurore Laluc and Glucksmann, basically both were MEPs during the previous European Parliament, and because the Socialist was the Socialist Party was kind of collapsing, Glucksmann took the lead of the Socialist Party for the European election. So add those one together for just the sake of simplicity, but the line is pro-European, so socialist. Really, they kept this line. Then we have the far left party, which is Mélenchon, indeed, and we also have a more, a smaller country party called the Communists, so Parti Communiste Français. This is
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so to summarize what you said, so the big parties, right? So we have La France Insoumise. They're more far left by Mélenchon, part of this group.
Yeah.
Then we have more center left, if I can say that, or left wing maybe. Those are the socialists and the Place Publique, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then again here, French Communist Party. I mean, the name says it all. That seems quite far left.
Indeed. Yeah, indeed. Mm-hmm.
So what I found interesting earlier, we had Melenchon saying we will not work in the big speech he just had. Maybe you also saw it like half an hour ago. He mentioned in the speech, we will not work with the center. We will not work with the far right. That's Melenchon from La France Insoumise.
Yeah.
Is there a scenario that the coalition could break, so to speak, and that the maybe more center-left parties are open for a coalition, or is that just complete speculation and unlikely?
No, I mean, this is speculation, but that's also realistic somehow. That's also why I'm also interested to see exactly, the composition of seats per political party, even within the left coalition, because that is really most likely that MPs coming from the Socialist Party or from Place Publique or even from the Greens, they will be more keen to work with Macron, with Renew. But indeed, like MPs coming from the far left, so Mélenchon's party, they will be less keen to like make alliances with Macron. And actually the head of the Greens, so she's called Marine Tondelier, she's a bit more consensual, and I will not be surprised if somehow her name will, pop up again later on, especially regarding the result that the coalition did. And she actually said that she would be more open to, make negotiation and work together with other political dynamics.
Interesting. God, interesting. So maybe if I go back to this image, right? So I like a bit of speculation. So let's play this game. I mean, one scenario. Actually, before we play the game, what are the next steps? So the prime minister, we do need a prime minister in France. How does it normally happen? How is a prime minister chosen after a National Assembly election?
Okay, so this is really a peculiar setup, but just to set the institutional scene a bit clearer for everybody who's listening right now. Usually we have the legislative election right after the presidential election. So we in France, we have what we call a semi-presidential system. So every 5 years, voters go out there to elect the president. And like usually a few months afterwards, so it's, that's when we're April 2022. And then in June 2022, we had the legislative one. So then we appoint MPs, so what we're doing right now, basically. But because the voting patterns and the voting dynamic haven't changed that much, in a few weeks, the president gets the absolute majority within the General Assembly.
And this is what happened, right? Macron, that's what happened to Macron when he became president, I assume, right?
He got the relative majority, which was already a problem for him. He didn't get the absolute majority. But, I mean, okay, some laws were passed and voted by the General Assembly. Some other laws were not passed, and it was a struggle for Macron to rule the country. So, somehow for some laws, he managed to find some partners to work on and in the Assembly. For some other laws were creating way more cleavage, like the retirement, like pensions, redesign of our pension system, and this law has created a lot of discussion, a lot of debate. It was really, really hard for Macron to find any type of coalition. So what's going to happen? No, but I mean, as you said, we need a prime minister. So Gabriel Attal said that he would be willing to stay as long as another one will be appointed. The prime minister is appointed by the president. It's always like this as it works. So now Macron will have to discuss with all the political forces, to try to find the best candidates coming from, the best political party. But there is no clear picture right now. Yeah.
Oh, it's incredible. And I mean, that's what I mean. I mean, if we look at options, so I think one option might be that somehow a coalition is formed, which is very unlikely given the stances. That's option one. Is there also an option of a minority government in France? Is that something that's possible, or a minority parliament, or not?
I mean, I don't really know what would be the dynamics, to be completely honest. I think that Macron, he will have to integrate some of the other political party within the government for sure, because I mean, first, why did he, even call for the snap election? It was out of kind of a democratic process. Saying, okay, Yeah, why? I mean, there
Yeah.
are like 100 theories out there. Just pick the one that is the more likely for you, but no one exactly understand, what was the strategy behind.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sure, he wanted some, like democratic support, but look at the map now. It's even worse for him than it was before. I mean, at least before he had a relative majority. He's like the second political forces within the legislative branch. So.
But Morgane, what I don't understand, but what we as I'm not French, so maybe I'm understanding it wrong. Is what I don't understand is Macron doesn't seem like he seems like quite a keen strategic guy,
Yeah, it seems like a really smart guy, or at least you think that. I mean, and this is kind of common knowledge. Like, I mean, at least you're surrounded by smart people, like that put out there like a strong strategy. So for sure, there must have been a strategy somewhere. It just, it's kept quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have some people asking who came in late about what happened. So let me do a very, very quick recap before we continue for Morgane. So recap is the projections are out for the French second round election. You can see them on the screen. These are projections. They're not final results. And what it shows is that currently the New Popular Front, which is the left-wing grouping of Greens, far left and left-wing parties, is currently in front, followed by Ensemble, which is Macron's party. And then in third place, we have the National Rally. That's how it currently looks. Again, projections, so things might change. To answer your question, Sebastian Grunfeld. Then from Kim, another question. Maybe you work at the Commission, Morgane, so I'm sure you have an idea here. What does the result mean for Europe? Will France still be a reliable partner? Or will Macron authority be completely powerless in the upcoming 3 years? Difficult one, but do you have any ideas there?
Super difficult one. Thank you for the super difficult question.
Thanks, Kim. You can thank Kim. In the
okay.
The
I mean, I think that. I mean, once again, unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball here. One thing that will be pretty sure is like the composition of the next government will, shift. The influence. At least not the influence, but like within the government, the influence will be shifted, and then it will impact, I would say, the stance of the country while negotiating the laws between with the parliament and with the commission. But then I won't go that far saying that France would be a reliable, partner or something like this. It just we need to see what will be the future composition of our government. That would really be the decisive key in the future negotiation at EU level. That's kind of a two-level playing game. Like, you have to deal with the domestic situation and then see how you set yourself, how you position yourself on the EU stage.
Yeah. Maybe if you could let the audience know a little bit more about the party stances on the EU, because I know at least that Macron's party is, of course, very pro-European Union, and this is your EU channel. So maybe the National Rally, I mean, they've softened their stance, right? They don't want to leave the EU anymore, but they're not exactly big fans either, right? Or would I, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so basically, let's take them one by one. So as I said, Renew is super pro-European. Actually, Macron started to have the European flag everywhere since he became president. And I think even during the 2017 campaign, he already, played a lot on like European identity. So Macron is highly pro-Europe, that's for sure. Yeah. Then we have National Rally, which is, of course, more playing on identity, on sovereignty. So not as pro-European as Macron. But I need to emphasize this. They have been softening their position on Europe quite a lot. And it was part of what we call the de-diabolization strategy of the party to make them look less evil. I mean, if I need to translate, it's how we should translate that. So when, even 2015, they were still talking about the Frexit. Then they were talking about getting out of the euro area. So it's completely over. Like they're not talking about this anymore. Like they've been softening their position a lot, but they want more sovereignty. They want, what we call the préférence nationale, which is completely at the opposite of what the single market is. So yeah, their position is extreme, like basic extreme right position towards Europe. And then we have the left, and the left it's a bit more complicated there. I mean, there are some rules that they're not happy with, like for example, controlling the deficit, like the 3% deficit Maastricht criteria rule. They're not happy with it at all. There are other like loss of sovereignty that they're not happy with neither. However, once again, within this coalition, we have the socialists and we have Place Publique, and this one is really pro-European. The Greens are highly pro-Europeans. So the position of the left coalition towards Europe, it's actually heterogeneous. It's not homogeneous at all because of these differences among parties.
French
so
politics.
This also makes the whole thing pretty interesting, because depending on who actually from this coalition is going to go to the government, then on the EU stage, the position will change.
Yeah. When looking at, I know these are projections, but when looking at these results, do you think that Macron's gamble of calling the election was worth it for him? Or maybe it's again too much crystal ball, but I mean, it doesn't look like it's worth it for him, or what you're feeling. Yeah.
No, okay, so let's get back to what were the theories behind the snap election first. And then
let's do that. Let's do that. Yeah.
So the first one was kind of the official one was following the European election, we've seen this wave of far right. So if the people want to speak, let them speak at the General Assembly election.
Yeah.
And I think it did, it couldn't go out there and say we're going to lose the election anyway. So it will go out there and say, I'm trusting the people, they're going to vote for us. They're going to wake up, and there will be the democratic wake-up call. So we're going to get the absolute majority and would be able to govern the country again. This theory is like 0% likelihood. I mean, just follow the polls for the last few months, follow the trends to all the elections that we had in France in the past few years. It was unlikely. So then other theories appeared. The first one was, we're going to get the absolute majority with the far right. So we, by the law of the constitution, will have to have a prime minister coming from this party. And that will allow them to, first, like the people will be heard because we will have this democratic election, and having the far right into power, but still contained by keeping our president from Renew, will make them able to do some stuff, but not enough stuff somehow. To apply some of their promises, but not enough promises to block the country, basically. So this theory is still, it's kind of sacrificing France for the 2 coming years to avoid them to get the executive power in 2 years during our next presidential election. This is gambling. This is throwing dice, and even it's a bit dark, right? It's like we're sacrificing. We sacrifice the country still for 2 years, because we know that by calling this election, the result will mean that the General Assembly will get more power. And then we have, so I really don't know, just pick your theory, because I think that, even within the theory that I've been mentioning, it's really gambling, that pretending that in 2 years, people will be sick of having a prime minister coming from the National Rally and won't continue voting for the far right. How do you know that? How do you know that in 2 years, actually, people won't be like, okay, well, you know what? We got someone from this ideology governing our country. The world is still spinning, because the power has been constrained. Actually, the France is not blowing up since the economy is still spinning. So we can continue like this. This is also something that can happen when you pick someone from this party, but you restrain the power of the decision making. So. But basically, those are the 2 theories, because there is no much more outcome that were possible anyways.
I mean, let's review. Very interesting what you're saying. So let's review it quickly. So theory 1, you said, is Macron's like, after the elections, we need to get the people to talk, we're going to score a majority, which obviously didn't happen. So theory 1 failed, if that was his idea, which I don't think so, because like you mentioned, it's so impossible to. It was such an impossibility back then.
But I mean, when you call out an election, it's really hard to say, okay, I'm calling out an election, but I know I'm going to lose.
Yeah, I know.
what would be, especially when you already have you don't have the absolute majority, but you have the relative one. And I mean, then Renew were campaigning, they were campaigning saying, okay, we need, we need the majority. We need to work together. We need to.
Yeah.
So you can't call out an election. You can't run for the election. You run the campaign and say, well, we're going to lose anyways. Let's look at the polls. So you have to at least pretend that you believe that it's possible to get better off after this election versus the initial situation.
Yeah. But then, okay, so theory one, I mean, of course he has to say that. So yeah, you're right. So theory one, that's a no-go. It didn't happen. It's not going to happen. So theory two was, okay, maybe then the right wing, or far right national rally, if they were to win, like you mentioned, then they could have a prime minister. Hopefully they mess up over the next 2 years or 3 years until the presidential election, and then we take back power. That was kind of like theory two, right?
Yeah, that was definitely theory two. Was basically let's give them a bit of power. Let's give them a bit of more room to represent the people, and then after these 2 years, that would be it. It's better having one prime minister who's come from the national rally under a president who actually from Renew, versus having the whole government coming from the far right.
Yeah. I mean, here's another comment from Kim Larson. He mentioned, can you give your opinion on why didn't Macron promote national rally chances to win the election? Okay, that's theory two. Wouldn't that be better for the presidential election in 2027? So he's basically saying, if I understand it correctly, why did Macron not allow them to win rather than retracting people and things like that from the second round? I mean, any thoughts on that? Or yeah.
I mean, no, I've not much more than I said before. I think really it's what most likely strategy two, which is let's give them a little bit so we can avoid giving them a lot in 2 years.
Yeah. And just, is it possible to call another election?
Okay, so in 1 year, basically, we need to wait at least 1 year.
So your constitution says you have to. Oh wow! So you could have a completely non-functioning government for a while.
I mean,
I don't want to laugh. I don't want to laugh. It's not nice.
Let's pray people are more, smart, and then this that doesn't happen. But by constitution, we can have one in 1 year. So this has to work that way for 1 year.
Okay. And what's the? I mean, you may not live in France, but what's the mood like the last couple of weeks? Maybe you have friends, or you talk. I mean, I think you live in Brussels, I guess. But maybe you can say something. What's the mood like? What are people anxious? What is the mood?
Yeah, so among young people, there has been a lot of demonstration. You could have witnessed that in big cities, like people gathering together. Actually, before even that the far left came up with the coalition, there has been a huge willingness and a huge dynamics within young people to really ask those parties to come together as a front, as it's called, Front Populaire against the far right. So this was a huge dynamic. But I think one thing that actually has been kind of documented by psychologists is the sideration effect. Like everybody was surprised by this snap election. It was really not foreseen, and this kind of that froze people. Like we didn't really understand what was happening. We didn't really understand what would be the consequences, like the direct consequences. And it's the first time that after a European election, we have this kind of setup. Like we never had that impact from a European election on, domestic and national politics.
Yeah. No, it's a very interesting time ahead. We'll see during the night what will happen to the parliament. Let me have a look if there's any final questions from the chat, if that's okay. Unless you really need to go, Morgane, I'll have a look if there's anything.
I'm not in a hurry.
You're not in a hurry. Okay, let me have a look. Let me scroll up. Claiming Basketball Club is asking if I support the far left. I'm not going to disclose who I support, but far extreme parties is not really up my alley. That's for sure. No, there's actually, I think we've answered everything. Yeah, what do you think? Where do you think tonight's going to go? Are you going to stay up all night to watch the results? What's your plan
I
for
mean,
tonight?
I think I'm too excited anyway to go to bed right now. So yeah, I will probably, watch the result and see. I mean, I want to listen to what everybody has to say, like all the leaders of the political party, in what direction they will be going. And Macron will talk later. That is, that's certain. So I want to listen to him. And I think the next few days will be really interesting. And then we will see exactly who goes to the government and, who does what and who works with who and who's friend with who and who's willing to make new partners. And
It's actually good. We've got a couple of questions. So if that's okay, I'm going to continue for a second. Another Kim Larson question. Will this election be the end of the French Fifth Republic? Or maybe another electoral system. Could you? I mean, I think that's unlikely, but let me know what you think.
No, I mean, I think indeed is unlikely. One thing for sure is that this, two-round voting system has been in favor of having two main political parties for years, and the fact that we are in these three political parties, like big dynamics, it's a setup that might not really go along with our voting system. I mean, the current one as well, at least. But yeah, no, I mean, I will not bet on a new constitution and a new,
No, I think that's also seems a bit unlikely, but yeah, you never know. And then one party we haven't talked about at all is the Republicans. So thank you, Weem Ibrahim too. What about the Republicans? Where do they stand within all of this chaos? Chaos is a harsh word, but it is a bit chaotic. Firstly, maybe what do they stand for? What kind of party is it?
Okay, so they used to be pretty liberal, actually. So basic right. I won't call them centrists, but they used to work with center parties.
Okay.
But during the previous years, their political line shifted quite a lot toward the right. You could easily see this just, looking at their political program online. They will focus on immigration issues, sovereignty, this kind of issue already echoed a lot to extreme right party, like basic extreme right party. So, I mean, long story short, I think some of the MPs actually divided between a coalition with the National Rally and sticking to the Republican line. So we had this, it was a TV show really. We had these scenes with Ciotti, which was basically the leader of this party.
Yes.
Decided that, he will work with the National Rally because, that would make sense. But then the other top executive of the party didn't agree with that. So they kicked him out of the party. So now we have this, I don't think it's a majority of the party supporters, but we have this like National Rally and a bit of Ciotti Republicans.
So let me understand that correctly. So Republicans had their leader Ciotti, I think, if I'm pronouncing it.
Eric Ciotti, indeed.
Yeah. So he kind of defected at the start, saying, "Let's work with National Rally." And the party, did they split somehow? That like parts of them are with working open to work with National Rally, and the others are like saying no, right?
Exactly, that's what happened, and that's what I mean. That was, I don't say it's funny, but like during the result of the first round, then you could see like when the projection were out, you could see that National Rally / the Republicans, and then you will see like the Republicans,
right.
But I mean, this was really, there was a TV show scene, like they were even fighting on the Twitter credential because this guy was like still using his Twitter account by the Republicans to prove that he was still the leader of the party, and the other top executive, they were trying to steal the credential to make sure that he will just stop saying those.
No way.
Yeah, I mean.
Okay, so that's hilarious. I didn't know about that, so thank you for sharing that. But let me understand that. So the Republicans with Ciotti, they could work with National Rally, so they probably add seats to some of them.
The more extreme right, the more extreme.
Right.
Because there are also some ones who were used to work with Renew, during the
right.
So some of them.
The others, are they open to work with? I mean, the left probably not, but Macron maybe or not?
With Macron, yeah, it's quite likely that some of them have a closer political line to Macron than they would have a political line closer to the National Rally. But I don't have, I don't even have a share to give you. I don't have a distribution to give you to tell you at this MP.
Right. Yeah. Maybe here's another question I think is interesting, and let me know when you need to go, right? Because I'm having fun with the answers you're giving. It's very interesting to learn about French politics. But we have a question here. What do you think from Psycho? Thank you, Psycho, for your question. What do you think on the economic plans that National Rally has? Does the National Rally have any economic plans that you know of that you could talk about? Or
I can give you some examples, but then okay, so first they were promising a lot of things like not having income tax when people are below 30 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, one of their main it was one of the main promises. But then, when they realized lately that they might actually come to power and like apply those promises, Bardella started to cool down a lot of what they were saying. So it was kind of saying that because the economic situation of France would be too chaotic, there are a lot of things that he said they will do that would not be priorities anymore. So it's really hard to give you an answer to that, because of course they have an economic program, but they also said that most of what they were promising would not be applicable in priorities anymore.
Yeah. And maybe we'll make this maybe the last question. Unless chat, if there's anything else, chat, ask now, because I'll use one more question for Morgane after my question, and that is the presidential elections. They are in 2027, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, Macron can't run anymore, can he? No,
he can't, because that's his second mandate, and we are in the fifth constitution, and that's prevent for having a third mandate. Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, likely what we can speculate again today is that Le Pen will run for National Rally for a fourth time, maybe. Yeah.
I mean, this is highly likely that she will run for
fourth time.
I mean, what is really unlikely is what exactly Renew will look like, because Renew is Macron. I mean, Renaissance, Ensemble, whatever we can. I mean, the Macron party is like, this is just Macron has a big political figure. So this is
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, it kind of relates to Optico Ops question. Will National Rally slow down for 27, or will they go even hard? Can't read the whole thing. Even harder for the 27 election. So I assume it means the 2027 presidential election, I guess. I mean, I don't know if you have anything to say to that, but they will probably go hard for that election. And who will Macron put forward? Not Macron himself, but what do you think could happen? Who is going to be the opposition?
Yeah, well, I mean, on the left side, it has to be said. I mean, the far left is usually has a big figure, has Melenchon for sure. For Renew, for the Macron's party, that's what we were discussing, is super blurry. Kind of rumor has it that Gabriel Attal will be, would be dealing with the heritage of the party. But what's going to happen with Gabriel Attal now? His prime minister is going to be removed, and maybe he's going to stay a little bit longer. This is the next step for this political party, is like, dealing with the situation and seeing exactly who will be able to be the leader of this party after Macron's. And as you said, it's going to come, in 2 years. So you need a transition before those 2 years.
Yeah. But Gabriel Attal, she's more liked than Macron at the moment in France, isn't she? I think she is sort of well liked, or do you know? I can't remember. I thought I read something about that.
Well, we have this tendency in France anyway to be more likely to like the prime minister versus the president. So because Gabriel Attal is the prime minister, we like it a bit more than the president.
Right. Morgane, thank you so much for joining the live stream.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you for informing all of us. And once again, you are a writer at EUNU, so we have the Instagram link in the description, so everyone, you can find it there. They do awesome content, really. I learn a lot about the content I do in my videos, in maybe even the content you wrote in my videos. So check them out. And yeah, thank you so much for being here, and have a great evening. I hope you get some sleep tonight with all of the stuff going on.
Yeah, I will try. No, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, have a nice evening. And yeah, have a nice evening, everyone.
Yep. All right. Bye, Morgane. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. So everyone, that was our final guest of the night. And we're also going to close the live stream soon, because my plan is, I mean, it's going to be difficult, but my plan is to have a video ready for you tomorrow morning on the French elections. And I kind of wrote a script already for a video. I created half the animation because I was pretty sure of what the results were going to be. And now that's out of the window because it's not going to be anything like I expected. So yeah, keep your phones or your computers available tomorrow. Let's put it that way. And I hope you check out the video I create, and I hope you all like it. Now, unless there's any final questions you have to myself or to the EUMS team, let us know now. Yeah, I mean, as always, we have to promote our work that we do. So if you do like this kind of content, please do consider Patreon. I always will say it. And secondly, also, yeah, you can become a channel member if you'd like to support us that way. And oh, last thing, also thanks to you, you can see behind me, we did it. We have 100,000 subscriber, and we have the silver award on hitting 100,000 subscribers. And that's basically because all of you here in the live stream, but also on watching my videos. So we really, really do appreciate it. Then anything else? Let me have a look if there's any more comments. I'm going to go up. Will you cover Orban's? Yes, Kim Lawson, very good question. I will cover the new group. It's basically been a tough week with the UK elections and also with the French elections. So when I'm done with that, I'll also create a video on the new group that Orban's creating, the Patriots, I think the name is. But in the meantime, you can check out a cool video with TLDR. They covered it, I think, yesterday or today, that I would highly recommend. Flaming Basketball Club, you have some interesting questions today. Do I support the military-industrial complex? No, no, I don't. I'm not sponsored by them or anything like that. There's issues that I believe in that are important. I mean, for one, you can see from the channel, I think the issue we have in Ukraine is I am definitely for support to Ukraine. I think it's one of the most important issues that we face in the European continent. But yeah, so let's see how that unravels. And you've seen that in videos of mine, so I'm sure you know. Then let me see if there's anything else. Let me scroll up. All right, I don't think there is anything else. All right, no, in that case, thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. I will update you on the results tomorrow, and we will talk in our next live stream soon. All right, thank you, everyone. Bye.